Come on, Google. YouTube's been a little slow today. Yeah, there it goes. It's Monday, May 2nd, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we're talking about tech debt. It was actually, despite the forecast said it would be like low 60s, but this weekend it was actually mid 60s and super sunny. It was way nicer. I have realized I just can't really trust the forecast until like the night before now.
Well, I think what happened is, there were similar temperatures, earlier, but it was very, very windy, and it wasn't windy over the weekend, and that helped quite a bit in terms of the temperatures.
It did help. But also, I'm glad we went biking on Friday because we did a big bike ride, and then, or on Saturday.
Work Friday?
No, we done Saturday, because then Sunday I get up, and we just go do a little light bike ride to go to that Japan Fest, and we see a little sign, and we're like, all right, 5 borough bike tours fucking everything up today. I always forget that thing's happening. Until it happens. There was a line of cars completely filling Queens or Crescent Street all the way to the end of Crescent Street because drivers didn't know that the roads were all closed.
Google Maps indicates it, so I don't know what people are using.
Oh, Google Maps is perfect about that. It not only does it indicate it, but it tells you how to get around it.
It's all over the news. It's all over. It's like, are you just not paying attention to the world at all? If you're in New York City at all, it's like you can't miss that it's coming, right?
Yep.
It's like it's everywhere.
I mean, my only thing about it is I avoid it as a biker, mostly because it's not that long, and the one time I did it was super slow.
So here's the thing, right? So if, on the one hand, right, it's like, I like that it fucks over cars, but the fact that all those cars idle, and waiting is not probably, it's, who knows, anyway. But it's this event where it's a big biking event because it has a lot of sponsorship. The number one sponsor is a bank. They got money for this thing, right? And it's the only one where New York City closes down major roads completely.
Yep, you get to bike in some places you can normally never bike.
Right, and on top of that, some of those roads are places where normally you could never bike. BQE is a highway, right?
Yep.
It's like, Verrazano Bridge has no bike lane. People are trying to get at one, right, etc. So, and then there's rest stops and such and such. So, but in order to participate in this event, you either have to do a big charity thing, which is a lot of money, or you have to pay a lot of money and fight for a ticket, or you have to volunteer and then you get a free ticket the year after. So we did it once in 2012, and it's like, all right, it's there's some fun aspect to it. It's not completely unenjoyable, but there's a part of the meh parts of it, for example, would be if you don't start early, you get stuck behind a lot of people at the start.
Yeah.
If you don't get to the end quickly, then basically like you walk, like people pile up at the finish line and you have to sort of walk like the last quite a bit because there's no room for anyone to keep riding.
I remember the one year I did it having to walk about a mile before Central Park because it was just so dense. Like all the bikers came to a complete dead stop.
Right. Well, you think at the finish line, people cross the finish line, stop, the person behind them stops. And if the right. So it's like,
you think they know you're in New York. If there's an escalator, you got to start walking as soon as you get off of it. You can't just stop.
Right. So it creates this log jam at the end. And soon enough, people are stopping before the finish line and walking over the finish line. Right. So they need to be like, have the finish line and say, keep biking until you get so far, then get off your bike.
Yeah.
Right. Like around the corner or some shit. So people can, go through the finish line, but they don't do that. And then there's another line at the Staten Island Ferry, because it fills up and then it leaves. And now you stand there waiting, right, for the next one. And you so on. And
there's no way to bike home. You can't even bike there normally, except one way during this one event.
Go back over the Verrazano. So people wait for hours to get on the Staten Island Ferry to get home if they weren't one of the first people to finish. So, it's not the greatest event, and it's only 55 miles, which sounds like a lot to people who aren't, cyclists, but it's really, if you can pedal, like you can do it. It's like, there's no major hills. The Verrazano is the biggest hill, and if you know how to use a gear, you can do it. It's like, if you're able,
I mean, you got over it just fine.
You're gonna make it.
In the early days of you biking with that bike that was way too big for you, you were just fine. Like,
yes, an old, unhealthy person, as long as they have a functioning bike, like on a city bike, will make it eventually, right? It's like a child is going to make it eventually.
Yep.
You know, people do this thing on folding bikes, right?
Well, and partly it's more because, you know, we went to like the Japan Fest too. There's this, in places where there's a lot of people, if there's an event that's even remotely interesting, either it's so expensive that only a few people can go to it, or it's accessible price-wise and a million people want to go to it, and it creates logistical nightmares or impossible waiting lists.
Right. So the event itself is not such a great thing to, you know, do it once for the experience or whatever, but it's not, right? As bike rides go, it's like you can just get on your bike and ride for free on better routes in other directions, right, out of the city, that are longer and nicer and, you know, better in every way. There's, you know, tons of them. But the thing I like about the ride is that people come and do this ride who are not, you know, the big time cyclist, right?
Yeah.
It's like it gets someone who would normally be scared of 55 miles will come out to this thing because
it's well supported. It's a big event. It's a New York thing.
Yeah. And though some of those people, some small percentage of them, right, realize after doing it exactly what I realized. Like 55 miles ain't that far. This ride ain't that great.
Well, just like the Harlem Valley Rail ride, rest in peace. There's a reason they had the 100-mile ride and the 80-mile ride, but they also had the 50 and the 40 and the 20 and the 12.
But people do every year. People do this bike tour, which is meh, and then some percentage of them become the cyclists that are out filling the other roads. Right? Because they realize, like, oh, wait, I get it now. Bikes are really, really efficient. At
least
on roads is not that scary.
The thing that I'm very happy about is because when I do go to the office, I always bike now, unless it's like actually raining or extremely cold, like below 40. And the number of bikers, and I said this last year and the year before, but it just keeps going up. The number of people biking to work during the rush hour is getting to the point that they got to start adding more bike lanes. It's starting to be a big traffic problem.
They said they were going to give us the South Outer Roadway. It's still held up. What's the fuck the problem?
So part of the problem is there's a bunch of other maintenance happening that went way over schedule that they need some of the space and lanes for.
Yeah, too bad. Just fix the upper deck without, deal with it.
Yeah, they can't, apparently. There's some stupid reason for it. What I'm mad about is at the where the bike path is, they opened up where they used at the base of the Queensboro Plaza in Manhattan.
Yeah, I don't go through that hole. I go through the old hole.
But so that hole's a problem. The leaving that hole closed was fine because only people who don't know their way around actually wanted to go out the hole. It's way better to go follow the bike path anyway. Yeah. But now that it's open, there's a little stop sign there. And you have bikers coming down the bridge at speed. They turn right and try to go straight out the hole. But meanwhile, there's other people coming from the normal path who are making a U left turn across their path onto the Queensboro Bridge. I have seen 3 different bike collisions happen there because it's an uncontrolled intersection. It's bikes. Like they made a really bad traffic pattern.
Anyway, it's not good.
All right.
News.
Tech Day.
Let's talk about some actual news.
Let's start with yours.
This news is not in itself is not that exciting, right? It's, Firefox is doing it already, right? But and Apple has theirs also, but Microsoft Edge is going to also include a built-in VPN, right? So the way this works is that you open up your Microsoft Edge browser, you visit a website, your traffic is encrypted and sent to a Microsoft server somewhere, and the Microsoft server will then go and make a request from the actual web server, right? And then collect the response and then send, the encrypted, response back to you. So VPNs like this have a lot of uses, some good uses, some bad uses, some meh uses, right? But it's getting really popular for now, even the big tech companies, Apple, Microsoft, right? To provide, just VPN service to just you at all times, right? So why would they do this, right? It's like, well, you can't use these, Microsoft VPNs to like watch Netflix from another country. All
Yep. I mean, this one's got a 1 gigabyte limit, even if they didn't, I assume, have other.
Well, you have to pay for it beyond that, right?
Yeah.
So that's one reason, is that they might be able to get more money out of you. Is if you like the Apple one, it's like you don't just get that for free. You, I think, have to be on iCloud Plus or something like that, right, in order to use that. So it's a service that they can provide cheaply, easily. They don't have to develop it; they just have to deploy it. It's really easy to do. If the big tech company can manage it, if every other company in the world has managed it, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't hard for them, and they can make some money on it. Why not do it? And the second reason is that, hey, it's a selling point, right? Is like we can tell our customers are protecting their privacy and their security, which they are in a way, right? You're protected from basically 2 major security threats. One, the other people on your network, like if you're at a coffee shop, or something, using a public Wi-Fi at a theater or at a Square Garden, right? They have a public Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And you use one of these VPNs, even a Microsoft Apple one, it's like you're protected from any shenanigans that are going on in those public Wi-Fis, airport Wi-Fis.
It gets a little tricky because TLS largely protects 99% of what anyone would do over one of those connections.
Yeah, but
and
still,
the people on the Wi-Fi still, like, they can figure out your MAC address
sure.
for tracking purposes.
And the last thing is, like, if you think about it, all of the unencrypted traffic that you send out your network.
Do I even have any unencrypted traffic? I'm just looking at every tab I got open.
Yeah. Your internet service provider.
Oh, GeekNights, firmrecruit.com, not secure.
Yeah. That's going to be fixed soon. Your internet service provider and anyone in between you and the service provider, like the coffee shop or whatever, right, could be, looking at all your data that's not encrypted. And even if it is encrypted, for example, let's say I visit google.com. Well, yeah, someone can see that I made a Google search. They don't know what I searched for, right? But they know that I went to Google, right? They still know some information, especially if you got some DNS going on, right? If they're your DNS provider, right? Like, Firefox is doing like those secure DNS over HTTP things, right? Which I disabled because I have a pie hole, but if they
also, URLs themselves that contain search strings or other metadata often leak data about you to certain services along the way.
Depends on how things are encrypted and whatnot, right?
Yep.
So when these companies are, providing you with VPN service, they can then, if you look at their terms of service, they may or may not be collecting data about you. They may not be collecting it in a way that can be traced back to you. But at bare minimum, they're probably using that data to at least, look at general traffic patterns and improve services and use that data for their own research and business decision making and whatnot. So that's why, all those reasons combined, every company in the universe is trying to get you to use their VPN, right? And I'm surprised we're not seeing like Verizon or anyone like that, right, want to fight back against this more than they already are, right?
Yeah, well, it's not. I guess it's not clear to me, or I guess a lot of people, exactly how every different group monetizes that kind of stuff. Because most of the data people want, like companies like Verizon want, is mostly, I assume, just to drive ads and ad networks and sell that data to ad networks. But they can do that, like the websites you're visiting are already doing that to you regardless of how you access them.
Yep.
The VPN can, at best, obfuscate who you are, but the data point of you were a person with this profile that they guessed at, sought information about XYZ, that data is still what they are seeking for ads.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't, but there has to be, if there's some other explanation as to why every company in the universe is starting up VPNs, it's like, are they actually just trying to, Microsoft and Apple do have an interest in protecting user security.
They do, because they do not have an interest in other companies showing you ads on their devices.
Right. I mean, like, it's like that is, definitely going to decrease like customer service calls or, other kinds of issues, right?
Yep.
So
it could also be as simple as
they reasons that they're doing this. The point is, all these companies are doing this for reasons. They're not just doing it because whatever.
Well, also, this is wave 2, because there was a big wave 5 to 8 years ago of VPNs popping up, especially in a lot of Nordic countries, offering their services to the world.
Oh, but those, right, so those are third-party VPNs, right? Like, go get NordVPN or what,
and a lot of them were either aimed at nerds or aimed at criminals and pirates, like pretty openly.
If you go on YouTube, even today, one of the biggest sponsors of YouTube videos, it's like I skip past the ads, but I can see that it was an ad for some VPN service, and they specifically are like, watch Netflix from other countries with our VPN service. Like they say that right up. They're not even hiding it, which I respect. Coming out with that. I respect saying, we sell crime, buy our crime. I love that. It's like, yes, don't beat around the bush. I respect you for coming out with it, right? It's like, but the Apple and the Microsoft ones, they don't provide that service. Those VPNs are going to be in your country and not help you do that. And they're only going to be in your browser and not really for all your internet traffic, all encompassing. So,
one way it could be
services means that they're up to something. So,
one thing could be just trying to get people into their general ecosystem of stuff. Because generally, once someone starts using something, they tend to keep using it unless something stops them, and it's easier to get them to pay to keep access to said thing. Another thing they could be doing would be around trying to head off competitors with ad networks and everything. It could also be they saw that there's a bunch of companies making money selling VPNs. Why not just sell one and use the free tier, like with this 1 gigabyte limit, just to get an ecosystem of people using it? You'll upsell to like 5% of your users. It becomes profitable and you're good to go.
But yeah, it's a thing now. The relatively past few year development of going from VPNs were first just a thing companies did, so you could connect to their thing to work from home, right? Or connect networks in different places to each other, right? And then they became a thing that you would buy that were standalone companies, and now the big tech companies are all pushing VPNs on people. So. In some other news, and obviously if you want news about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, GeekNights is not the place to go for that. We are not journalists in that regard. But one aspect of this war that edges into technology and is interesting is the asymmetry between the stated and expected capabilities of the Russian military, in this case, the Russian Navy, and the reality of modern drone technology and anti-ship missiles and basic things. But basically what just happened, you might have seen earlier, not that long ago, Ukraine was notably the first nation in world history to sink an enemy combatant's flagship, despite not having a navy of their own, which was interesting. Russia's one boat. No, not even. I mean,
they have coastal boats, but they don't have like a navy, like a blue water navy.
How many boats does it count do you need for it to be a navy? Like if I get 2 paper little sailboats,
the Scott Navy,
call that a navy. It's 2 boats, right? They float, they go.
Well, that navy might be easy to defeat, and there's a lot of subjective judgment over what constitutes a navy.
That's what I'm saying. It's like what it's like. Like you have a navy, but then you have like an armada. That's even bigger than a navy. Right? That's like 2 navies. It's like, so how many boats do you need to make a navy?
But so way back in the Falkland Islands conflict, the Argentinian land forces sunk a bunch of British ships because it's really cheap to sink ships with like missiles and things. But
that's just a basic principle of the universe is that it's easy to destroy things and it's hard to make things. Everyone who's played with Duplos knows that. You build a Duplo tower. No, it takes a while. Knock one down takes 2 seconds. Right?
But with military stuff, it's not just hard to build things, it's also hard to defend against things like missiles. So if it costs X dollars to make an anti-ship missile, it'll cost 10 times or 100 times X dollars to defend against that one missile. Like that's just...
think about what does it take to build a boat, right? You need a dock, a dry dock, and a whole factory, and a bunch of people who know what the fuck they're doing, and you need materials and expertise and time and resources and energy. And what does it take to get rid of a boat? Something that goes boom? It's like...
and gets there.
Something, there, no more boat. All that hard work down in the ocean. Goodbye.
But countermeasures are difficult.
Iceberg, you don't even need a boom. Giant boat, they spent all that time on it. Send it out to sea, 1 iceberg. That's it, bottom of the ocean. Right? It's like...
But also asymmetry in defense is harder than offense in modern militaries in that the countermeasure to a thing is so much more expensive than the thing that you can never defend yourself against anything except with extremely advanced technology. So anyway, breaking news.
It's like, how do you defend against, a missile? It's going real fast. How are you going to shoot it down? And then when it hits, it blows up real big and real hard. How are you going to have an armor to block that? Right?
Yep.
It's like, not
so,
easily.
So today, footage was released, and it appears to now be confirmed. Russia had 17 of these advanced patrol boats, which are some of the few ships in their navy that are post-Soviet, meaning they were designed and built after the fall of the Soviet Union. They're some of the more advanced patrol boats they've got. And Ukraine just sank 2 of them with basically cheap as shit drones, and they published video of themselves doing it. So Wikipedia already updated it to show that Russia has lost 3 of these things, because apparently Ukraine.
We're not talking about DJI drones that you can buy, right?
No, not the drone that I've got like a DSLR hanging off of.
Right. No, we're talking about better drones than that, but not as good as like the U.S. drones that we, bomb people in the Middle East with, right?
Yep.
Not U.S. war crime level of drone, right? We're talking about like the shittiest, cheapest version of that. But they are still pretty capable, right? They can fly fast-ish, right? They can stay in the air. You can remote control them reliably. They can carry an explosive and drop it accurately, right? So that already is, despite being crappy compared to what the U.S. has made, that's still pretty capable drone-wise, right?
But when it comes to air power, and I don't want this to take up the whole episode, you can read the article to see all the details, but the technology aspect of it is that for basically everyone has assumed that a nation like Russia, just like the United States or France or other like major military powers, can defend themselves against the cheapest military technology. Like
we just talked about, like a missile is going really fast. It's hard to shoot down. It explodes really big. It's hard to armor against.
U.S. ships have like phalanxes and all sorts of interesting technology.
Right. The U.S. drones are going to be going so fast, and they're going to have such good targeting, and they probably got stealth shit. Who knows what the U.S. has, right? It's like it's going to be.
I don't believe there are any stealth drones. I don't think we've made those offhand.
It might be secret, right?
I don't know a lot about drones, to be honest, except what I read looking at after I read this article.
Right, based on what we know about the U.S. spending so much money on the military that if it can exist, they probably have it.
But I guess what I'm getting at is it was pretty well assumed that this kind of attack is basically futile against a modern military. Like if this kind of drone...
Anti-aircraft could have shot these drones down.
And for whatever reason, Russia's Navy and military don't actually seem to be able to field basic anti-aircraft capabilities. And
if Ukraine had tried to send these drones to France to drop bombs on Paris, France could have shot them down trivially.
Yep.
Right?
Which is making this
a problem.
Which is making this conflict start to look more and more exactly like how Desert Storm looked in terms of it was the 4th largest military in the world, and it turns out it was literally obsolete. It's like in Civ when you've got your advanced men-at-arms and pike and shot military, and then one small musket man boy shows up.
Yep.
Well, I guess riflemen would be in that case, because pike and shot technically has muskets as part of it. But you get my drift.
There's a point at which, in military-wise, if you've ever played any, games are not so inaccurate in this one sense, at least, in that if you do have a technological advantage, it doesn't matter until it's big enough to matter, and then it matters a lot, right?
But it also... There's
if it was like, if we had knights, it was medieval times, and I had a bunch of knights and you had a bunch of knights, right? It's like, okay, we're pretty equal in numbers, right? And it's like I upgrade my knights to, I don't know, some other kind of, we don't have anything that's not guns, basically. And it's like, I might have new knights and you have old knights, but if you outnumber me, it's like, it's probably not so great, right? But if I just get like some guns, I suddenly need way, way, way less knights.
Well, like that comic we read that was one Marine detachment is in ancient Rome and it takes out like 2 legions, like that thing.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, that's exactly it.
But
legions against knights, that would be pretty close,
Yeah, well, actually, depending on what was going on in the time, that could actually be pretty close because there were also the equivalents of... Anyway, this is going to derail, but...
it would still, the guns would not be interesting. It would be one-sided.
I guess what I'm getting at is if 2 countries are equivalent military technology, most of their weapons on both sides are useless against each other or are awash in some way. And it comes down to numbers and logistics. If they're close but not equal, then asymmetric warfare happens. Like, yeah, we got a bunch of aircraft carriers, but you've got a bunch of way cheaper missile boats, and only one of them has to get through. But if there's a complete disparity, like the disparity is great enough, then suddenly there are weapons that one side has that the other side doesn't have, but they're weapons that are the army in power normally can't use against anyone, but because of the lack of technology on the other side, they can deploy them, like old A-10 Warthogs and like that kind of old technology. We're starting to see that happen in the Russian conflict, and I don't know what that means for the future. There's a fear that if NATO got involved, they would destroy so many Russian forces so quickly that would cause other kinds of escalations.
Well, anyway.
And another little news, tiny little thing, because I bumped into this. There's a Reddit thread where someone posted a picture of a wall plug that was in an apartment they moved into or a house they bought. And they're like, does anyone know what this is? It looks like an Ethernet port, but it's too small.
Is it just the telephone jack?
It's just a telephone jack.
Okay.
It's just a telephone jack.
People don't know what a landline phone is. Like,
I mean, I haven't had a landline since we left RIT, and we unplugged that landline not too long after we moved in.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess there might, if there's one in this apartment, I don't know where it is.
There were some in this room. I actually replaced the faceplate, and I pushed them into the wall, so they're gone.
I presume that I might have to, like, there are Ethernet holes that go to the FiOS thing that's like in the closet, and then there's a FiOS thing in the trash room, and then even another one in the basement, and so on and so forth. But and then one outside, right? The whole thing.
Yeah, we got a FiOS thing in the front room, and that FiOS thing
does provide phone service, so there must be a way for me to pay for it and then connect a phone.
So the FiOS box does have RJ45s just on it. If you open that door, like they're just there.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely does. But they're wired up to one that's close to my desk. So why would I mess around with that?
Oh, they're not wired up to anything because I didn't plug them into anything. But this apartment has RJ45 or RJ11 and phone cable going to every room, and there's a little breakout box in the front that just nothing's connected to. Just like we have coax going to every room in the apartment, and that's how I get the FiOS into the room I want it.
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, maybe soon they'll make houses that don't even have that. Just put fucking Ethernet cables in houses.
Well,
people just use Wi-Fi. People don't want that either.
I know.
People want that.
All right, put a marker. But anyway, things of the day. So a while back, you used a thing of the day, and it was that Verisatium video where they talked about the brain teaser, the puzzle problem of what if you have a wire that is like 1/10 of a light year long or a light second long, some ridiculously long wire. Put a battery at one end and a switch at the other end. When you click the switch, how long before the light bulb lights up? And they did that really long video, and half the internet claimed that their answer was wrong.
All right, well, the internet was wrong.
Yep. So they actually released.
11.
So they released news as of April 29th, 2022, and it started to get a lot of views. A whole bunch of even serious physicists, researchers, electrical engineers, all sorts of very serious people claimed that Verisatium was wrong in various ways, despite their repeated clarifications. So,
well, I mean, you can. I hope that at least none of them, if they were truly very serious physicists who were knowledgeable, I hope none of them were trying to claim things about the speed of light that were incorrect.
They
right?
They were not
other explanation, but
yeah, they were basically saying they were making a lot of funny arguments, and also a lot of the internet who are not experts in these domains. For a bunch of different reasons, they were saying this video was wrong. So Verisatium actually...
people like to think they know things.
Yep. So they put together another video where they did the experiment with extremely expensive modern simulations as well as oscilloscopes to absolutely prove it experimentally. And they did a much deeper explanation of exactly what's going on to the point that they simulated the entirety of Maxwell's equations for electric fields in 3 dimensions for actual circuits and use that to show all of these interactions as they occur, fully, completely calculated. And honestly, the reason I'm making this my thing of the day is not because they proved all the people on the internet who were wrong that they are in fact wrong. That just happens all the time. These visualizations actually made it click. I get it. I don't get the math. Don't think I'm pretending that I get this math. I'm not claiming that. But the concept of the field and why the answer is 1m over the speed of light, I get it now.
All right.
The visualization, it's just nuts mostly to see this like almost quanta level simulation of an electric circuit. That is not software I think I have access to.
All right. So, there's a food, if you're not aware, well, it's sort of a food, I guess, called Furikake. It's a Japanese thing where basically
Sprinkle it over
you
your
get
rice.
some dried seaweed, some MSG, some salt, maybe some dried scallions in there, garlic, dried whatever, right? It's basically like a dried sort of spice mix, but a little bit chunkier, right, than a ground up powdery spice mix, right? And furikake is used in many things, right? You could take some rice and sort of mix in furikake to basically make flavored rice. And then
when I was poor, a lot of my dinners were just rice with furikake on it and some cheap miso soup. That was the whole dinner.
Yeah. And then you could like make onigiri with that flavored rice.
Oh, yeah.
And it might not even need filling if your furikake is good enough. You could make a dish like a ramen, and you could sprinkle some furikake on, on like a just right on top there. You could sprinkle furikake pretty much almost on anything.
Yeah.
Right, that it goes with.
You know what? It's really good on omelets.
Yeah,
it's real good on an omelet.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, if you have not experienced, and there's many kinds of furikake, right? You can mix it up. You can get a spicy one. You can get a plain one that's like just scallion or something, right? Or a seaweed scallion. That's it, right? There's a whole wide world of furikake. But in this cooking video, Romel, I believe his name is, concocts something truly incredible. Even something, right? I don't even like Dorito. I don't eat chips with weird flavor powders on them. But
I did for a time.
The genius idea of Dorito furikake.
Well, consider if we step back and what is the flavor powder on a Dorito? That is basically the science of making a flavor that is addictive to humans.
Pretty much. It's like, but now I'm thinking like, well, what other snacks can I crumble up and, with some seaweed and some MSG and some scallion?
I mean, I'll say I don't eat Doritos anymore either for a lot of reasons.
I can't even remember. It's been so long since I've attempted to eat any flavor powdered chip of any kind.
But a couple years ago,
I don't even remember what a Dorito tastes like.
Oh, I do. I can imagine it.
I have no memory. I try to imagine. I know what they look like. I know what the packaging looks like. I know what right, and it's a triangle.
I can in my brain,
my mouth, and I have no memory of what the flavor actually is.
So something fascinating is happening. Like you remember we talked way back about when we learned about aphantasia and how some people just don't visualize things in their heads and some people do. Mm-hmm. I right now can perfectly in my head simulate the sensation, flavor, taste, everything of a Dorito. And I was doing it.
And I'm simulating it, but there's like there's no flavor being simulated because it's like an unknown.
So something fucked up just happened. I tasted it in my mind. I'm salivating. I started salivating. I'm fucking not kidding. I am salivating. It's like there's too much spit in my mouth right now. I'm drooling over this.
Well, let's think of a food you've never eaten ever, right? Like
food I've never eaten ever.
Whale, right? So now imagine yourself eating some whale.
I can't.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling with.
Wow. You nuked that memory. I just put that memory aside. You nuked it.
It must at least last millennium,
but
if not
a couple years ago at the Baroness, before they moved, they added a new burger for a while, and that burger had Cool Ranch Doritos on the burger.
Not a bad idea.
And you know what? That was acceptable.
Well, I mean, Taco Bell's been making their Dorito shells and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I've never had it. Oh fuck! Now I'm drooling again after you said that.
Well, I've had coworkers that ate it in the past when it was a new thing, right? They ran out and got it.
I mean, Taco Bell's still above my line. I would, if I were on a road trip and my choice was Taco Bell or literally any other fast food, I'd go to the Taco Bell.
The fast foods that I would place above Taco Bell are
White Castle, but that's just me. I'm not saying it's better.
Arby's, but not the roast beef. Right?
I was about to say, you say Arby's. You mean the Arby's chicken fingers, and maybe you're getting those curly fries. Yeah.
Yeah, the curly fry. Yeah. Arby's is one.
Bojangles.
No, not that one. Anyway,
You've never even eaten at a Bojangles. You don't know what a Bojangles is. You just know that Chase liked them.
Is disgusting. All right.
Anyway, this guy made Furikake out of Doritos.
Yeah.
I don't know if you actually said that.
It's a really good video.
It is a really good video. I watched it right before we did the show.
Okay.
In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book is 9 Fox Gambit.
No, it's 9 Fox Gambit. 9 Fox, I believe, is one word.
It is one word. I was going to do the thing I did last time. Not 8 Fox. Definitely not 10 Fox.
I was right. It's one word. 9 Fox.
I said I didn't disagree.
Yeah, okay.
I just noticed that the way you framed this on the website. After the Genji debacle.
Debacle, yeah. Debacle.
And don't forget the book club book we just did, The City We Became. The sequel is coming imminently to that book. Probably going to read that instantly. And that one's done. The book club book's there. And if you didn't know, we have a book club and we've done a bunch of books. And if you want to read one of those old books.
Despite it being so slow to do book clubs, if you look back, it's like we've done quite a few, considering we're not a book club, exclusive podcast. And, we just been around so long and we read books so quickly when we do read them.
Yep.
That,
especially pre-COVID. But those books, if you want to, read the book, there's at least one.
Pre-Genji. Pre-Genji.
There's at least one Geek Nights episode where we talk about that book, so you can sort of relive it through us. There's also almost always a pretty long forum thread. Some of them are on the old forum with a bunch of listeners, many of whom I assume are dead or scattered to the winds, but they talked about the book too. You can relive the book club experience outside of time, if you so wish.
I can't think of any other meta moments other than the fact that, weather is improving in New York. Sorry, Southern Hemisphere. It's our turn again. And the New York Rangers are in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Thankfully, so far the playoff.
So much money that you will be in attendance in Madison Square Garden. So will we.
Yep. So, let us know. I would gladly say hi.
Our money. Bye-bye.
Wearing a mask and seeing you briefly in MSG is not more dangerous than what I'm already going to do going to MSG.
I mean, if we win, we win. If we lose, we save money. It's like it's a win-win situation. If we get swept, good. We barely spent any money. If we win a whole bunch, well, my money's gone, but we won. So, okay.
Yep. And so far, the games we have tickets to have respected the Geek Nights schedule. So hopefully Geek Nights won't be disrupted significantly by this.
All right. And hopefully they'll eventually, as they have done so long ago, 2016, 15, and backwards, 17, I guess. I don't remember. They showed some away games of later rounds in Bryant Park. Who knows if that'll happen again? Everyone wants it to happen again.
On one hand, I want it to happen again. On the other hand,
we want it to happen real bad.
But every time it's happened, we have never seen the Rangers win a game where that screen was up.
There are other watch parties that we can probably attend in some fashion if we get to later rounds for away games.
Yep. So. Maybe we should even throw one in the Geek Nights Discord.
Oh, we could,
Restream the way that all New Yorkers watch hockey.
Restream an already illegal restream on Discord. See if your Discord gets shut down.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
All right. So tech debt. Now, this is a big topic, and all I got to say is I can't give a lot of specifics about some of the things I want to talk about, especially from recent jobs. But what I will say is that for those of you who don't pay a lot of attention to me and my career, I basically made my very well-paid, good career. I built my entire career mostly on top of the fact that I am willing to embrace technology debt and legacy systems, understand them, and help people get off of them. That's... There is so much money to be made in knowing about old stuff. Probably more money than there is to be made knowing about new stuff.
All right. So the phrase tech debt has been, I guess, the internet says it was coined by one of these people who was one of the Agile Manifesto writers or whatever, right? That may or may not be true, but
I've definitely heard the term at least as early as around 2003.
Yeah, but it's regardless of who invented the term, the concept is very old in terms of all sorts of engineering and technological developments. But it's especially true for software engineering for reasons that I'm going to explain. So
I would argue that its pace is accelerating due to the way people make software today, too.
Right. The pace of the tech debt itself is accelerating, and also the use of the term is accelerating. Yep. It's like become a more and more popular topic over time. So what the idea is that, you have engineered and built some sort of system, right? It could be literally anything. It's obviously we're going to mostly talk about software, but it could be like, I don't know, a car, right? Or a bicycle, right?
Here, you know what? I got a good example we could use. The entertainment system in airlines.
Mm-hmm.
Like you make a system like JetBlue did back in the day, has little TVs at every seat, and it has a way for someone to watch some show or some movie or something on that little screen. You got some software, a little database, something that makes that go. Let's even skip the hardware and just talk about the software.
Sure. Well, you make a thing, and at the time you make it, right, you start with nothing, right? It's like, we're going to make a new thing. Airlines have never had little TVs on them before, right? We're going to make this, right? We came up with this idea, and we build it. So you build it with the technology you have available, the knowledge you have available, the resources you have available, right? And you do, presumably, the best you can given the circumstances, right? Now, you're going to have things, you wish you could have done better, but you didn't have the resources or the time. You're going to have things that you, wish you could have done better, but you didn't know better because this is your first time doing it.
Yep.
You're going to have things you could have done better, but those better ways weren't invented yet at the time, right? That you made it. And then lastly, right, is there are going to be requirements that, there didn't exist when you started, or they did exist, but you couldn't fulfill them, right, with your initial deployment, right? So like maybe the initial thing was, you only need to show movies that are on DVDs in this like centralized movie, DVD carousel at the front of the plane, and that's all anyone can watch, right?
Yeah.
And then later on, it's like, we need satellite, live TV now, stuff like that, right? So, all of those things mean that after you build and deploy, or even while you're building, right? Like you're building something, and while you're making it, you found a better way to do it. And it's like, well, now you have this difficult situation, right? It's like, well, do I just slightly modify what I've already made to incorporate a new thing?
Yep.
Right? I could just, I can make a change and add the new functionality or fix the problem or just meet the requirement, by just,
so say I replace the DVD carousel with a little server that has a bunch of encoded video files on it, but it plays the videos out through the interface that the old carousel did, because that was easier to implement.
Yep, exactly. So it's like, well, there's better functionality we could be having there. Everyone on the plane could be watching a different movie instead of, only being able to choose from 8. We can have 1,000 movies, but because we couldn't replace that interface without tearing apart the whole plane, it's like, we only able to make it that much better with the duct tape solution.
Yep. Right? Or like if one seed is broken, then you have to reboot that server and everyone loses their movie and has to start over. Stuff like that starts to happen.
Yep. And it's like, working on the system, right? It's like, well, you originally designed or, something hopefully, right, that was somewhat elegant and cohesive, right? But then it's like, the original design just doesn't accommodate these new things we want to do, right, going forward in the next version, right, the next update, and it's like now working on this system, right, initially building it was kind of fun. Working on it to get it to version 2, version 3, version 4 is not so fun anymore. It's a pain in the ass. Something, adding a feature that should be easy to add is very, very hard, and because the current system is so old and janky.
I can give a real world example from a company I don't work at anymore. It was a long time ago. We had a system that would monitor a certain kind of transaction in high volume and like over a middleware bus, and it would show the status of all the things that were happening over that bus in semi-real time. So you play all the messages through it, and it would show you what the end result was of all those messages. Cool, that worked fine. But all that logic was done at runtime in the client. So you play the messages to the client, it calculates the state. Pretty easy. That has a lot of problems if you want to say, save that data for later. If you want to say, have 1,000 users all looking at that same data, you want 1,000 clients doing these extremely intense calculations, or do you want one central server pre-calculating? So all right, now we want to add a feature. We want to alert on if one of these transactions gets into a bad state. Now we're fucked because the alert either has to be in the client, or we have to take that client logic, pull it into the server, and run it there to even be able to detect the situation to raise the alert, or refactor the whole thing so it was server-side from the beginning.
Yep.
I lived through that, and I chose the latter. I said, fuck tech debt, we're paying this off right now.
Yeah, so that's the issue, right? Is that, when you're working in a employment environment, right? It's like, okay, this is what we have an actual goal we want to accomplish, right? Technology is just the means, right?
Yeah, the goal is I have a product I want to make, or there's a problem I want to solve.
Right. It's like, I want to deliver this feature or this product. I want to deliver it soon. I want it to work well, right? And it's like, well, if you don't redesign, if you stop to redesign your whole system so that it's always elegant and perfect and incorporates everything nicely and cohesively in the best way you can, then delivering anything will take a long time and cost a lot of money because you got to start from scratch, right? You look at car manufacturers, right? You look at, pick some car, the 2004, 2005, 2020, right? It's like, they're really similar. They don't change the car that much year to year.
Nope.
They change a little bit because they'd have to redo the whole factory, right? Redo everything. They can't do that, right? They could do that once every so often, right? It'd be like the all new such and such car. We redesigned the whole thing every 5-10 years, whatever, right? I don't know how long cycles are. But most years they just upgrade it a little bit.
Now, and don't think that the moral of this whole episode is going to be build everything right the first time and don't cause tech debt.
Impossible.
It's
impossible.
There are very few places where that is the right answer, and I would argue those places are the same kinds of places where if we had functioning governments, we would require certified engineering practices like we do for things like civil infrastructure. You can't just build a bridge fast and loose and say you're good and deal with it later.
Yeah, the bridge has to last a long ass time.
Yep. Some things need to be over-engineered, like the systems on ships that make them go, or the things on airplanes that keep them in the air, or medical devices. Pacemakers can't have software bugs in them.
Yep, exactly. So,
but if you're making like something that just plays video over a little screen, are you going to spend $100,000 of developer time making an over-engineered solution? You're going to spend $10,000 making something that works 99% of the time and is a pain in the ass to upgrade, and that's tomorrow's problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to a company, right, like, my company or any other company, and you're working on software, you're going to come in, and if they have any existing software, even if they just made it 5 minutes ago, right, they probably already learned a way to make it better, right? And it's like, all right, are you going to rewrite it and try to make everything perfect and let the perfect become the enemy of the done? And if you do that, you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money, and at the end of the day, you will have nothing to show for it, nothing, right? It's like...
Yep. You're going to have someone like me yelling at you now. You're going to have a product manager saying, yo, we have to deliver this. Like, it's been 4 years.
It's like, oh, we want to add this feature. Oh, well, that feature is very annoying to add considering our current architecture. I will have to re-architect to add that feature in an elegant fashion that is, performant and nice. That's going, and if you spend so long doing it, It's like, well, you just wasted all that. It's like, even if you keep your job that long, you spent all that time doing it. Some other company probably did it faster, and you just, right?
Yep.
Like, there was no point. No one's going to use the thing, right? So you went with the duct tape solution. You got it out. You made the money. You made the deal, right? And it's like, but now you made it worse for the next thing you have to do.
Yep. That's the debt, and that's the important thing to internalize. The debt that we talk about, and everyone talks about in this space, is debt that your engineers have to pay at some point.
Well, or not.
Or choose not to. But that choosing not to pay off technical debt comes down to, is this thing end of life? Will it ever be end of life?
Mm-hmm. Well, so one strategy for conquering this debt is, realizing that whatever thing you're making is so important that it needs to be right the first time, and you spend lots and lots of resources, times, and monies to make it right, very right. You design it very well. Another way is to just have so many people working for you, Google or Facebook or some shit like that, right? That you can have some people making new things and people fixing things all at the same time. You can get everything done, right? You can just do it all.
There is a third, even worse way of, you have a ton of people and you can just throw more engineers. Every time you want to update the system with a lot of tech debt, you just throw more engineers at it than the last time you updated that system, and you scale that forever. I've seen that happen at big companies.
Some people can do that. The one thing that can also happen is engineers are human beings, right? And even though they need to work to live in a capitalist society,
nobody wants to maintain your old COBOL bullshit.
Right. It's not fun to work, especially on software, but any sort of other project that is so poorly designed and annoying. It's like, you want things to be easy breezy, right? It's like, the new GeekNights website, good example, right? It's like, I can add, the way the new GeekNights website coming soon is done, it's really easy for me to add new features to it. It takes like 2 seconds, right? As if I actually spend time on it. The old GeekNights website's a pain in the ass to work with.
Yeah.
It's old and busted, right? And it's not fun. So it's like, if it's your job to work at a company that insists on, having this old system, keeping it operational, not replacing it, right? Because that's just a bunch of time and money that doesn't actually result in any immediate business benefits, then it's not a fun place to work, because it's like you're spending days and days and days doing something that should take minutes, right? If the system wasn't garbage.
I've been a product manager at 3 different companies, and not to give specific examples, but I have many times in my career across all of these companies had teams where people quit at a high rate just because there's a lot of tech debt in that space and it's not fun, and no amount of money is going to get someone wanting to do that work.
I think it's one of the reasons that, tech people seem to love going to startups and whatnot, because when you go to a startup, they don't have anything there. You're you're always starting from nothing, and you never have to deal with this problem.
And every engineer thinks, I finally get to build something the way I wanted from the beginning.
Well, but there is one thing, and if you keep doing that over and over, and as long as you deliver something, right? If you just start things and never finish anything, then you're not getting anywhere. But if you go somewhere and build something from scratch and deliver it, and then skip the maintenance, you just go somewhere else and start from scratch and deliver again, and start from scratch and deliver in a cycle, you will carry forth the lessons you learned on the previous ones, and each one you do will be better and better and last longer and longer, and won't have the problems you had in the previous designs. Or
you build a reputation of delivering things that do actually have a lot of technical debt hanging around, but you never have to pay it. It's like an 18xx game where I get a bunch of debt and then I dump my company on Scott when he's not paying attention.
Yep.
A lot of companies end up like that.
A bunch of money, and then here you go. You have to buy a 5 train for this company now. Not my problem. I sold that shit.
Yep. Now, I'm of the mind, because tech debt is actually a big part of my professional career. Like managing that is something that has been a big part of my job.
How much time should we spend, right? Because there is a point at which the tech debt becomes so big that even though you won't have an immediate thing to deliver by fixing it, if you do it over, then you'll be able to do so much so quickly, right? It'd be like, it's like putting, a little jet propellant, right, on your business there, right? And also, what was I going to say? Anyway, whatever.
So what I can say is I think a lot about this, and I do have very, very well-defined professional opinions around this. I'm curious if Scott will disagree with any of these, because the biggest thing, the most important thing I see in the concept of technical debt is that there is either one person, or at least one domain in a very, very big company, or in certain situations, two domains of people who should be the ones who decide how much tech debt to take on. And it is not the engineers. The people who decide that are either the product managers or the operational teams that are not engineers that do customer support and maintain the system around the edges. In my mind, the engineers should be able to outline the rough effort to do something the over-engineered way, the like kind of normalish middle of the road way, and what is the duct tapingest fucking way you could get this done. But the business should decide which of those is the correct option for any given product.
I think that, I did remember what I was going to say is that the other situation is when your business literally cannot continue, right? You hit the wall, right? So it's like,
the interest payments on tech debt take up the entire team.
Right. Well, it's like you cannot deliver the thing you want. It's not real. It's not possible. Or the resources to duct tape another thing on are just too great. It's like you can't go any further. That's why, like I said, the car companies do eventually redesign the whole car, because it's like, the technology changes so much. At some point, it's like we can't just tweak last year's model a little bit. The other cars are so far ahead of us, right? And we can't catch up to them with our existing platform, right? It's like you look at, say, chip fabs. They're like, listen, we can only design so many better chips on this process. We need a new factory with less nanometer process to go forward, right? We're not getting anywhere with this, right? It's like we've hit the design limit. That's it. Right.
I've been at places where we had teams that own things that hit 100% KTLO, meaning they do nothing but keep a system working. There is no capacity to add anything to that system or change anything about that system. They are constantly fixing that system. That's about the point when, if you didn't already declare bankruptcy on that thing, you absolutely have to.
Right. Usually the best strategy is to, if you've got something like that that's really meh, right? You should see that it's meh, right? And not wait till that KTLO point or whatever you call it.
Well, don't
right?
pretend it's fine. Like, as a product manager, the product people who work with engineering has to be very transparent about what the problems are, and the product people have to actually listen to them. Like, if you and I were working on a project and you said, look, we are having trouble adding more features, this is starting to become a problem, then there has to be a business conversation of how much will that affect us in the long term? Will that tech debt get too big before we phase this thing out? Like, there's no one solution to this. It's a dialogue between engineers and product managers. There's no one person.
If you want to have a business that lasts a long time, what you have to do is, you have to recognize on day one that this is going to happen, right? Is that you're going to make a thing, and that thing is only going to be able to carry on so far without some sort of redo, refactor, remodel of some kind, right? You can only fix your kitchen so much. Eventually you need all new cabinets.
Yep.
And you got to time it. You have to say, all right, this, we're working. Okay, we made it. We delivered it. It's working, and we can keep adding to this for this amount of time, right? How long, if we start from scratch again, how long will it take us to make another better one from scratch, or at least redo a better version, right? Mm-hmm. And you need to have one team of people carrying on with the first one as if it's still your business and delivering features and fixes for the customers, and simultaneously work on the next one such that once the first one hits the end, like, all right, we can't carry that one any further, the new one is ready and you can sell it as like a new, better deal, right? It's like Windows 3.1, we can't get any further, right? And then Windows 95 is here. Surprise, right? It's like, here it is, right? If you wait for Windows 3.1 to be dead and then start working on Windows 95, everyone's going to be using Macs by the time you're ready with Windows 95, right? It's like they started working on Windows 95, way before Windows 3.1 was dead, right? They stagger it. Right?
Yeah. Now I found I'd say the biggest causes of bad technical debt are either business people saying yes to things that engineering has warned are more expensive than they realize. Like, that is a common problem. Business people agreeing to small features in a vacuum who don't understand the actual underlying systems that well. I find a lot of success by saying no to people. Very few people in those spaces tend to say no, especially when there's money on the line. A lot of companies will say yes to a new deal with a customer that requires a new feature that now requires the accumulation of a bunch of tech debt, and no one's ever willing to pay it off. That might actually be the single biggest cause. And the other cause that I see most commonly is the engineers who built the first system built it from one set of requirements, but nobody in the business ever actually told them what the long-term plan was for that thing. Like, hey, build a system to make video play in a plane. Maybe the product manager should have stepped back and told them, yeah, so 5 years from now, we're going to be selling this on buses, cruise ships, etc. Like, whatever the plan is, what are you going to do with it in the future? Because an engineer, they might architect something very differently if they know, like, what the future is. If I'm writing, back when I used to write code, I wouldn't make a separate class for something unless I thought that I had some reason to. And if I was making something quick and simple, not a lot of classes, a lot of kind of messy code, because it wouldn't matter that much.
But yeah, this is basically, it's a never-ending topic, because literally anyone who works anywhere engineering anything, right, is working with a system that has some inherent flaw, and they're trying to make it, do things that weren't considerations or weren't properly accounted for when, the foundation of that system was set up.
Yep.
And even if they made the system 10 minutes ago, they already found something that's like, damn it, it's like that. Why did the GeekNights website take so, it's taking so long? It's because I keep finding, I've already had to, while working on it, I was like, shit, there's RSS feed things I'm not supporting. I have to change this whole thing, right?
Now, it's easy because in GeekNights, Scott is basically both a product manager and the head engineer, because there's no business person telling me and Scott what to do.
No. But it's like, as I learn, as I go along, right? It's like, I'm redoing it because I don't want to be... I'm doing the redo part right now. I couldn't do it alongside the old one because I'm only one person. So.
Now, a not talked about enough aspect of this, because there's we can't give really specific advice. This is every project is a totally different calculation in terms of technical debt. Right. But the thing that people don't...
fundamental calculation is still sort of the same, right? The zoomed out calculation.
Well, you know what it is? Do things eyes open and tell all the people building something what your plans are for it.
Right. Well, it's like, I want to achieve this actual real world goal, right? The engineering project is a means to an end, right? Even if it's a bridge, I want people to get across this river more easily, right? How can we do that?
But tell the people making the bridge what the bridge is going to be used for in the end. Don't just tell them to make a bridge.
Right. Well, it's like, we have this much money, right? We have this much time. These are our goals, right? This is what we want to do. This is what we need, right? You lay everything out, and then you got to calculate, like, hey, would it be better to just go with a ferry? Right? It's like, accept all possible solutions. And then once you have one in place, it's like, and then the next thing comes along. It's like, damn, we went with the ferry idea. That was the best idea. It was the right idea at the time with what we knew. But now we want to get cars over, and we bought a people-only ferry.
Yep.
Right? And the dock we made is a people-only dock. And we can't get cars up on the dock, even if we went out and bought a car ferry. What are we going to do? Right? Yep.
But
do we build a bridge, or do we redo the docks and get a new ferry, right?
And in what would on the surface seem like fairly equivalent situations with large platforms in my career, I have told people, stop all new features. I'm going to give you a full year to rebuild this thing from scratch instead of adding anything to the existing platform. I have, in very similar situations, said, we're just going to keep this going because 3 years from now, we're shutting the whole thing down anyway. So nope, you're not going to re-architect it. Just put more and more duct tape on it until we shut it down.
It's like, what's the calculation? How much money, how much money are we going to spend, right?
Yep.
Is it worth it to build? You just calculate it, right? Is it worth it to do this or not, right?
But I find the places where tech debt, the interest you're paying on your tech debt gets the worst. When people have the biggest problem is talked about the least. Tech debt is usually relatively cheap if the same team that built it originally is still the team working on it today. But if that original team of, say, 5 people, 4 of them are replaced with new people over 5 years, and now you've got to deal with tech debt, that tech debt is a lot more expensive because you don't have the people who know why it was built the way it was originally. And especially now, like right now today in this post-COVID, well, the weird sort of not quite actually post-COVID time and the great resignation and engineers quitting all over the place and changing jobs. If any of you out there interact with technology debt, there is a high chance that interest rate is going to quadruple as people quit and you lose the only person left who knows how that code even works.
Well, I mean, that could be a thing that if you lose a lot of engineering employees, right, that might be like, okay, well, the new people who come in, right, and I want to attract new people, right,
you get to rebuild it.
New thing. Don't have them work on the old thing, right?
That's a strategy I have employed to entice people to join my engineering teams over the years. Like, hey, see this thing? Like, cool, right? Well, I'm going to let you rebuild this thing from scratch.
Yep.
People get real excited about that, at least at first.
Yeah, because they can not make all the mistakes of the past, make all new mistakes, learn from those new mistakes, then go to another place and learn from those mistakes, and so on and so forth.
And don't think you can avoid making mistakes. The only way to avoid making mistakes is to treat it like engineering with a capital E, and almost no job you get anywhere making software will actually treat engineering like engineering. That is rare.
I mean, even if you work but I mean, even if you work at NASA where it's capital E engineering, it's like they make mistakes.
Yep. They still make mistakes. The mistakes are sometimes even more costly. They only have one shot to do things.
That's why they make it capital E, because the mistakes are so costly. So,
and I think that